Are you tired of the limited customization offerings on Linktree? Dislike having their branding on your page and want to do something of your own instead? Well, what if there was a way to do it all yourself, exactly to your liking, and to do it for free, including the hosting? My name is Cedric, and today I'm going to walk you through doing exactly that. I'll guide you on either building this from scratch or using a template that I provide, or any other, then hosting it for free on GitHub pages or Cloudflare pages. This video will be viable for anybody at any skill level, whether you've coded before or not. My examples will be very simple and using basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But you can advance the process however you wish. Feel free to follow the chapters and timecodes in the comments, description, or YouTube video player itself to jump to different parts that you want to get to. Without further ado, let's get into it. To start us off, we'll need a few things planned out. For my example of this process, I will be using an IDE, which is a code editing software of some sort. I suggest using Visual Studio Code, GitHub, and a GitHub account, of course, Cloudflare pages or GitHub pages, whichever one seems more viable or convenient to you, my template code, and or the code that I write during this video. Feel free to use it, use my better template, or use any template, of course. And as a little bonus, a purchased domain, which is definitely not needed if you do GitHub pages instead. I chose to include this part because it feels a bit more personal to have it be myusername.com and let that be the link to my Linktree-like thing. With those things situated, let's start coding. Assuming you're wanting to write this from scratch, you could take a variety of approaches. I'll be going over my very basic quick take on this project. To start us off, I created a folder somewhere on my machine named Linktree Guide. In that folder, I have a text file that was renamed to index.html and another renamed to style.css. Be sure to show extensions for file types and delete the .txt part of that if you haven't. Then there's a folder named images that I already have a couple images I'll want to use. These are just logos and stuff like that. Open that folder in whatever IDE you're using, again in my case Visual Studio Code, and then we can start writing some junk. Start off by jumping into the HTML. A website like this can be handled in very simple ways. The basic head stuff for metadata, then within the body tag we just need an image for your personal logo, an H1 for your name, an H2 for the subtitle, and a container div that will contain the logic for all the clickable links. Those divs have an A tag that you will use to note the link you're trying to redirect to. Then within that, I include another div which has an image and a P tag for your link's logo and the name of the link respectively. To make multiple clickable links, you would copy and paste that entire div container, then modify the content to your wishes. In my example here, you can see that I supply IDs to some items. This is important for the CSS, the styling we will be attaching to this project. If you're super beginner level, then copy everything I'm doing here. You can also find this exact code within the description, along with some better, more in-depth versions of this exact same project. After you've built the HTML page, you can make adjustments to the CSS. Within the CSS, I'm supplying a font I like, adjusting the background to my personal choice, and most important of all, setting the display of the page to flex. This entire project, for almost every single one of the templates you might be able to find, and for mine itself, relies on the flex property. Just after that, I align everything in a column and center the items. Outside of that, there are some simple things like changing the text color of all the text tags that I used and removing the underscore from the A tag's hyperlink. After that, I set the entire body of the HTML to have a margin of 10 pixels. Then it's time to resize the logo image. I adjust the image that I added the ID of logo to earlier by setting a width or height of my picture manually and letting the other dimension to be resolved automatically. Changing the display of this image to block and adding a margin to it as well. If you want, you can make the image have a circular border of some sort as well. Afterwards, I bold the text for the title, the H1. Then I make the subtitle, the H2, italic. That one's just kind of for fun, I suppose. And finally, I get to the container, which I force to stay the whole size of the body and add a margin yet again. At this point, I notice I made a slight mistake earlier and remove the extra container, as I only need one of those. Then I write the logic for the link bar, which are our clickable link items. Plenty you could adjust in here, of course, but be sure to include some padding, margins, and a set of height. Not to mention display of flex and centering the stuff. I also toss in an animation with the transition stuff to make the links hoverable with some visual flair. It's also important to adjust the image within the link bar itself and the text too, setting their sizes to make for nice visual sense. With that, you're honestly good to go. Tinker with it as much as you like. Jump around to some of the links to test out your clickability. But what if you wanted wanted to do things a bit differently. Hey, I don't even use what I wrote here. This is my version with some extra stuff included. I just didn't want to write it all out again. Well, hey, if you want to use something a bit more robust and maybe a bit nicer, then maybe you just want to grab a template project instead. If writing code from scratch just isn't your thing, then maybe using a free template would be more viable. In this case, you can snag one from GitHub, no problem. Clone it to your own project and personalize it. I created my own in-depth template version of this exact project that you can feel free to use and reference however you like. Clone the project, change the text, images, and links, remove and add whatever you like, then you're good. Don't like mine that much at all? Don't worry, there are loads of versions of this that you can fork or clone on GitHub as it is. Just give her a search. I'll include a link in the description to my project if you wish to use that. Once cloned to your own GitHub and edited and all, we can get on to hosting this thing and let anybody see it. Our next step in this process, which was briefly touched on in the last section, is ensuring you upload the project to GitHub. However, this is going to be split into two parts. For the sake of covering all of this well in this video, I'll just upload the thing to GitHub with a normal name and expand on selecting GitHub pages or Cloudflare pages afterward. Head over to GitHub and create a new repo. For the time being, you can give it any name. As a little skip though, if you're just going to be using GitHub pages, which is quite easy, you can just name the repo username.github.io. Note that this is case sensitive, username needs to match. Whatever you choose though, make the project public if you're going to be using GitHub pages, and if you want to, you can do private for Cloudflare, and then add a README. Now you should upload your project to this repo. A couple of ways to do that, but if you're a beginner, just do what I do here. Get onto this page and submit all of your files from the directory you created to house your project originally. If you cloned another project, then all you need to do is rename that repo and use it. Now it's time to make a decision. GitHub pages or Cloudflare pages. For this project we are working on, you can choose either. Both of these options allow you to host a public static page, both are free, and both allow you to associate a paid domain if you want. If you were to choose GitHub pages, your repo has to be public, and if you did Cloudflare, it can be private. I personally prefer hosting simple pages like this on Cloudflare. I use them for my domain registration anyway, so everything can be isolated. From what I understand, I believe GitHub pages is more meant to be a thing for hosting showcases of your GitHub repos, but I don't think they have anything against using it for, say, a portfolio or a link page or something, whatever, so long as it isn't commercial. Cloudflare has the benefit of having pretty solid built-in web handling and analytics if you would be interested in that sort of thing. If you aren't buying a domain through Cloudflare, aren't routing domain stuff through Cloudflare, and or don't even have a Cloudflare account, then just use GitHub and be done with it. I'll walk through both options though. To host through GitHub pages is pretty simple. Ensure your repo follows the correct naming structure, which was username.github.io. If it isn't, you can just rename it. Enter into the settings, rename the repo if needed. Once there though, select the Pages section in the sidebar. In Pages, change your branch to main and hit save. Then honestly, you're done. Your backend view of the page will look different than mine, but you can see here that after saving your main selection, you should have a live page under the username.github.io page. Feel free to visit it, but note that it can take up to 10 minutes before that page is live. In one of my GitHub pages projects, you can see here that I added a custom domain. This optional step requires setup with your registrar, so you'll need to dive into the documentation for GitHub pages about that part. Link to that will be in the description. If the GitHub pages approach isn't your style, then you could try out Cloudflare pages instead. I already own a domain that I want to use for this project. I have it through Cloudflare and I'm going to simply use it. Within GitHub, I went and further customized my project a bit and I'm ready to push it live. You can see through Git here that I already have a repo labeled Cedric-Linktree-Alt. This is a private repo that I made that houses the customized personal Linktree alternative project. It's simple enough, upload all the content of your project just like before. With everything finalized, we can jump into Cloudflare. Note that there's a lot of private info in here, so I will probably block out and crop a lot of things. Anywho though, within the dashboard of Cloudflare, look toward the sidebar. There's a drop down for workers and pages. Click on the overview. In the overview section, click on the create button, then click on pages. It would seem you can directly upload your project if you happen to be interested in that, which is news to me partway through this tutorial, so I will connect with Git instead. After associating your GitHub or GitLab if that was your thing instead, you can select your repo. In my case, it'll be the Cedric-Linktree-Alt repo. Select it and adjust the project name for simplicity and ensure the branch is the correct one, main in this case. You can notice further down that there are a few other options for some things. These aren't needed for this guide, but you can note it for future projects. I didn't use any framework for this, but you can see the option to do so is present. Once you are ready, click save and deploy. It'll take a few for it to handle all of that, but should be fine. Once complete, scroll to the bottom and continue to project. After you've continued here, you can view your page at the basic dev URL. As an optional task though, if you have a domain set up through Cloudflare, you can input said domain and make it your custom URL for this exact page. The process will be handled automatically by Cloudflare, so just activate it and you're good. As noted here, it can take up to 48 hours for your site to be viewable, but here it is in all of its glory once finished. Now I have my page that I created, which again was slightly adjusted from the one I made during the video, and have it using the domain I wanted. Perfect. I hope this video has been helpful and I wish you the best in your Linktree alternative setup. I highly recommend you just clone my project that will be linked below and edit it, but to each their own. I've been Cedric or Stupid You. Feel free to check me out on Twitch, my normal YouTube, or whatever. Comment below if you have any suggestions, tips, or questions, and do the like thing, I suppose. Algorithms and all, I guess. Thank you and enjoy.